Hey guys, Michael the DC Multiverse Collector here, very excited to be bringing you this review of the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Justice League Taskforce Build-A-Figure Wave. Now, you'll see I'm breaking tradition with this review. I'm breaking the format. I haven't got the figures in their boxes. We're not going to go through all that today because I think there's just a lot to talk about with this wave and I want to get straight into it. Before we do that, I just want to say a big thank you to Head Start Toys and McFarlane Toys for providing these samples for review. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I know you can't sub to every channel and everyone asks you to sub to their channel, but really it helps me out. And if you were anyway inclined, please do that now and hit the notification bell so you can be kept notified of all my videos as they go live. Anyway, with all that out of the way, here we have the Justice League Taskforce wave. I've taken them out of their boxes. Before we move on from that, I just want to say the boxes themselves are actually really nice. I like the departure from the normal box design. These figures, in addition to their display stands, they also come with some other accessories such as the Build-A-Figure Darkseid pieces. You can see that, and a range of other things. Notably, we get a range of effects pieces. Look at this, just so many bloody effects pieces, and they are all identical and they are different colors. We've got 4 yellow ones, 2 blue ones, and 2 red ones. I believe Superman came with the red ones, and Batman came with the blue ones, and Aquaman and Flash came with the yellow ones. They're all identical, and in my opinion, these are a waste of time, so we're just going to move on from those. And they also came with their collector cards. You'll see here with the very cool 90s looking art on the front. Very reminds me of toy lines from the 90s. I kind of like that. And of course, video game box art from Justice League Taskforce. And here are the data files if you're so inclined to have a look. And as we go through these, you will note that the Flash from Taskforce is Wally West. That is something to note. Yeah, so there we go. You get the data files. Now, onto this wave. Now, this wave, when it was revealed, was pretty much universally hated upon. I think we've really got to talk about this conceptually, okay, and in terms of execution. So in concept, the idea here is that McFarlane Toys was trying to capture the aesthetic of the 90s Super Nintendo Justice League Taskforce game, which was a fighting game. I never played it. I was aware of it, in that 90s SNES pixelated style. And so when this was first rumored, I was imagining this sort of pixel art style. And when it was revealed, lo and behold, we have this sort of pixel art aesthetic. It's kind of not quite cell shading. It's like cell shading, but pixelated. Anyway, it's very odd looking, okay? And so while conceptually, I think it's a very cool idea to try and make a wave based on a 90s video game. I think that's very cool. I think there's some problems with the execution that we'll get into that sort of make this a little bit of a tough one to recommend to everybody. But for those who it actually appeals to, I think it'll appeal quite a bit. It's a whole bunch of reuse. There's very little going on here that is new. But look, there are upsides to this, guys. All right. Now, the upside to this is that those of you with a great set of Flash, Aquaman, Batman, Superman in your collection, really, you don't need this. There's no one character here that will make the wave essential. Even the Build-A-Figure, if you don't want to get these 4 other figures, you can get the Mega Figure Darkseid, and it's basically the same. So if you look at it from one very generous perspective, there's nothing here that compels you to buy this. There's nothing predatory about it. There's not one thing that you can get if you buy all figures that sort of compels you to buy things you don't really want. I think this is a completely optional wave, okay? So it's whether it's your cup of tea or not, and that's going to be in the eye of the beholder, okay? So in terms of, I suppose, the execution of this concept, I think it varies from figure to figure. I would really like to start with the figure that I think works the best, and I think that is actually Arthur Curry, the Flash. So the Flash here, you'll see he's pretty much got the same Endless Winter Aquaman body that's now been used a few times. We'll do some comparisons later so you can see what I mean, but it is the same body. You have seen this a million times. The good news is it's actually a really nice body buck. You'll see here that his sort of orange scales have been sort of cast in a browner plastic with sort of gold highlights. And the thing with the scales is that they make the pixel effect quite subtle. So it doesn't really come across as pixel art, I guess, which kind of gives it just, I don't know, like an interesting shaded look. I don't mind it. Here on the legs where this sculpted detail is slim, it's kind of like a flat texture. You can really see that pixelated, topography there. And I don't love it, all right? It's not my favorite. And I don't think it's executed all that well, even though I respect what they are going for. The good news with this figure, I suppose, is that if you really don't like the paint on the legs, you could remove it pretty easily. It's just a bit of paint. I think that would come off with some isopropyl alcohol or whatever is good for removing paint off action figures these days. Don't take my advice for it. Go do some research, but I think that would be relatively easy to take off. And then, probably even the body, you could do the same thing. And you'd be left with like a fairly good-looking Aquaman figure, in my opinion. The trouble is that there's just so many good Aquaman figures now in the DC Multiverse line. I don't think this is the one you need to settle for. Obviously, the most unique aspect of this figure is the head sculpt. I actually really like it, guys. Controversial, I know, but I love this over-the-top flowing hair. His skin tone is a little pale, but the actual sculpt of the head is really, really nice. And the hair is really, really nice. It's kind of soft and pliable, and I don't know, like it's funky and cool, and it's something different. And I really like the sort of look that it's underwater and flowing. So the trouble is, I don't think this skin tone is going to match any of the other Aquaman figures. So it's not a matter of just taking the head off this and popping it on the body you want. That's not going to look great without some sort of repainting. But I think just sort of like as a single figure standing there, maybe Aquaman might be the best looking and my favorite. This is the Wally West Flash, and it is on that Blue Beetle body. Of course, the Barry Allen Flashpoint Flash was also on the same body, and it's fine. I'm getting a little bit tired of it, but it's functional, okay? It's classic and functional, and I think the star of this figure here is the head. I think it's a really good Flash head sculpt. I think it's quite unique. These sort of like little earpieces here look very unique. I've never seen those before, I don't think. And I just kind of like the expression. It's kind of just very 90s, very stern. I like it a lot, guys. I really do. I think the real trouble with this figure, there's a couple of troubles that I have with this figure. That is that I really dislike the pixelated Flash logo on his chest. That emblem is just, I know they're going for a pixel art style. The problem is that it kind of comes across more like a printing error, almost like somebody accidentally lowered the resolution on the paint job when it was being applied, and it doesn't look fantastic. And I think the paint on his cowl here is just really awkward and messy, and like you just can't shake the feeling when you look at this guy that like if he just had a traditional emblem on and none of that pixel art painting, like this would be a really great Wally West, like a 90s style Wally West. But they kind of had to go and, gussy it up. You see there's a bit here on the boots. Doesn't bother me. Again, that pixelated look just looks like lowered resolution. It's not nice. And you see there's nothing on the back, but you see how clean it looks on the back? I wish he looked that clean all round. What is interesting, and this will bear out when I do a comparison, is that the red of this figure is just completely different to the Barry Allen Flashpoint Flash body. So you're not going to be able to sort of like match the head on that body or anything. Even if you remove that paint, the reds won't match. So this is kind of a unique prospect. I think the head sculpt is strong enough that it makes this probably the second best figure in the wave. Although it's unforgivable, he doesn't have running hands. I mean, it's the Flash, but anyway. This Batman is exactly the same figure that came in the Bane 2-pack. The cape, of course, is a little bit different. That was a two-tone cape. This is a single, thickness cape, blue on both sides. And of course, the paint job is different. And this is the one where, like, if you look at that emblem on his chest, that pixelated look is terrible, I think. It's just not a great look. But I'll come back to that. I'm not fully negative on it, but it's not my cup of tea. Let's put it that way. And you'll see that Batman really gets a lot of cell shading. I think Superman is the only figure that gets more cell shading than Batman. And it sort of continues on. You'll see under the crotch there, a little bit on the diaper piece, the abs, and even his head is just, covered in that paint. It's, nothing on the back. Look how clean that is. Gosh. I think the biggest flaw with this figure, other than the paint, is that this cape is just way too big. It's that same sort of like, Adam West Batman cape. Like, it's just huge, right? And if it's going for like a 90s excess look, like that's fine. But to me, it's just way too big. And it's using this starchy material it's just not my favorite, guys, if I'm being honest. I've said this in previous reviews. I really like the softer fabric rather than this starchy stuff. And I like my capes to just be a little bit shorter so they're more maneuverable. But Yeah, it's not bad. Like it's that Nightfall buck. Obviously, we've seen that many times before, and I think it's a real banger. Like it's a really nice body buck, and I really like the proportions for Batman for Nightfall. So yeah, Batman's a really interesting one. I think it's just the paint is just a little bit over the top for my taste. So it's a bit extreme. Like there's just too much going on with this figure for me to recommend it. Even as a Batman fan, I think you wouldn't get this one just on its own. You'd get the Bane 2-pack with the Nightfall theme. And I think my least favorite, if I've got to be honest, is the Superman, right? And I think everyone knows why. First up, the paint on this guy is just really, really like overbearing. Like I've got my lights turned up so you can see all the details. That's why everything looks a bit washed out. I just want you to be able to see how far they've gone with this pixel aesthetic on Superman. Like it's really extreme, right? Let me adjust the light a bit. And I just think it's too much, okay? It's just way too much for my taste. And it's really going to be quite specific. Like this is never going to be your default Superman or Batman or Flash or anything for your like collection. These are just way too esoteric for that. So you have to bear that in mind. None of these are going to be your default. They're not going to be your main. This is sort of like an extra if you want to build out your collection. It's one of the things actually, like if I'm being honest, I actually really like about DC Multiverse is that it gives Todd the freedom to just create characters from all different media, games, books, TV shows, movies, comics, and he does that and has a bit of fun with it. I think this is one of his wilder sort of waves, if I'm being honest, and I kind of respect it. I respect it even though it's not my favorite. This Superman is on the Crisis body, which I think is really the best Superman body. We'll do some comparisons later with that figure, but I really like the height of this Superman. He's a really nice height. You've seen the articulation before. I'm not going to go through it. What I don't like is the head sculpt. I just think it's going for that 90s sort of grim look, and I do not like it. It's just a little extreme. The paint's not super great. It's not my cup of tea for Superman. The cape is interesting. So this is not the same as the Crisis Superman cape. That it's sort of similar in design, except the wire goes all the way around the bottom of the cape, whereas the Crisis one did not have wire at the bottom, only at the sides. I find the wire all the way around really interesting. I don't know that it adds much. I don't know that you get much out of it. It's quite maneuverable, but it adds an extra level of like thickness, I suppose, like and heaviness. Like the whole thing is just heavy because of that extra wire. This is not a terrible figure, okay? It's easily my least favorite though. All right, so moving all the other figures off to the side, let's have a look at Darkseid, because I think there's a bit to talk about with Darkseid. I mean, in many ways, this is just a repeat of that mega figure that we got earlier this year in August, whenever it was, which was more superpowers inspired. It had a cape. It also had the sort of medallion on the chest, and of course it came with some accessories like an alternate head, some alternate hands. I think that mega figure is the superior figure overall, and certainly you don't have to sort of buy a whole wave of figures just to build it. So by all means, if you want that Darkseid, get it. I think that's the one to get. I will say though, I really, really like the colors of this Darkseid. I love the stony dark gray, and I love the sort of darker blue of his suit. I think this is my cup of tea in terms of colors, much more than the Superpowers version. And I gotta say, even that paint job, that pixelated video game paint job, comes off really well on Darkseid. If you kind of look at him posed on a shelf from a distance, kind of just looks like lighting hitting him. I don't know, it looks like comic book shading to me. It's not as pixelated looking as, say, Batman or Superman, and it's more sparingly applied as well. So I kind of feel like this is kind of the best figure in the wave, next to AQUAMAN in terms of the paint. And another thing I think is worth bearing in mind is that because all of this is just molded dark blue plastic on the torso, on the legs, where is it? There's no paint on the arms. Actually, yes, there is. There's paint here on the inner arm and a little bit here on the shoulder. You could probably just remove all of that without damaging the figure. So if you really just wanted to turn this into a more classic looking Darkseid without the video game aesthetic, you would just simply remove it. Yeah, so that is an option. I mean, I might even try that. I might try and custom this guy. If I do, I'll do a video showing how I did it. Just removing that paint. I think you'd end up with quite a good looking kind of, you know, I wouldn't say a classic Darkseid, but a very good sort of default Darkseid, I think, for your shelf. If that Superpowers look is just too specific for you, I think if you were to do a little bit of work to remove some of that paint, you'd be okay. And if you don't want to do that work, I actually think this works quite well on its own. I mean, see, look at the back, so much cleaner looking. You can kind of get a sense of what this would look like. You would lose a lot of that grey scale on the belt, but I mean, there is an argument to be made that he looks pretty good on his own. It's only when you get up close that it looks a little bit rough. So Darkseid's pretty cool. It still has all the flaws of that Build-A-Figure in that the arms pop off and everything like that, and the articulation is just grim, okay? He does not move much, but like I said in my review of that figure, it's Darkseid. He doesn't have to do much. Same great head sculpt, but we only get one. We do not get the Omega Beam sort of head sculpt, which is a bit of a shame. Yeah, I mean, if you're clamoring for a Darkseid, guys, get the Mega Figure version, but this might appeal to you if you are a real Darkseid fan. So that is my feeling on Darkseid. For our first comparison, let's have a look at the new Wally West from Taskforce alongside the Flashpoint Barry Allen on the left and the Rebirth Barry Allen on the right. Now, the Rebirth Barry Allen on the right remains my favourite Flash figure. Of course, we have so many to choose from, and from both Barry Allen and Wally West. These are the sort of three red and yellow suits that we've got. We've also got a Wally West from JLA. I mean, there's more, but these are the three that I own with this sort of traditional color scheme. I think Rebirth Flash is my favorite, and of course that Flashpoint Flash is pretty nice as well. Ironically, I think this new Wally West might have the best head sculpt of the lot. Unfortunately, it is marred by that paint, but if you are a skilled customizer, you could probably get it off. But in terms of the sculpt of that head, I think it looks really good. And like I said, if not for the aesthetic of the paint job, I think this would be one of the best Flash figures. It's an unusual one, and certainly if you're just looking for like a red and gold Barry or Wally for the shelf, I think there are better options than this one, including either of the ones that you see on either side of him here. Moving on now to AQUAMAN. So all you Aqua fans out there would well know that McFarlane Toys has released a lot of AQUAMAN figures in the last 4 or 5 years, of course. The Endless Winter here, one on the right, is probably the quintessential AQUAMAN that is released, and there's the digital version on the left with the classic styling. He's quite nice, but in many ways, the middle one here, the Taskforce AQUAMAN, kind of might be my favorite of the three. It's not going to be my default AQUAMAN, but I really, really like the head sculpt and that hair design. I think it's just really fun and dynamic, and I love fun and dynamic, particularly for a character like AQUAMAN, who sort of is always moving and swimming, and yeah, I really like that. You will see that they all have very similar tridents. In fact, they're the same trident, and they're all made of the same bendy plastic that always looks warped. I wish it was just a little bit stiffer, that's what she said. And I think that the Endless Winter one on the right looks nicest in that gold plastic rather than the sort of garish yellow of the two on the left. So there's that. I still think for my money that the best AQUAMAN that McFarlane has released is actually the Page Punches AQUAMAN, but that's an argument for another day. Of these sort of, orange and green comic looking AQUAMAN figures, these are the three here. There's also the JLA AQUAMAN. You got so many choices, guys. It's really up to you. I still think in many ways that this AQUAMAN from Taskforce is my favorite of the wave, and a solid AQUAMAN in his own right. And for what it's worth, here is a head swap with the new Taskforce AQUAMAN's head on the digital AQUAMAN or classic AQUAMAN's body, and you'll see that the skin tone doesn't match on the neck and the face, but it actually works better than you would think. So if that's a look that you want with this sort of flowing hair, this is certainly possible, and this is feasible, and in many ways it's another reason why the AQUAMAN figure in this wave might be the best one. It's got the best head sculpt, the coolest head sculpt, and it's actually quite universal. You can probably use it with your other AQUAMAN figures and it'll work quite nicely. And here we have the new Taskforce Batman alongside the Batman from the Nightfall 2-pack. You will see that they are the exact same figure, save for the cape, which is two-tone on the Nightfall version, and obviously the paint job is different all around, but otherwise these are the same figure. You will also see that Nightfall Batman here has some gesturing hands that he came with, and of course the new Batman comes with only fists, so an inferior figure in any way. And I think if you sort of wanted this look for Batman, the Nightfall version is superior, although you may prefer the colours of Taskforce, but certainly the Nightfall version is going to be more flexible for your display, whereas the Taskforce one is highly specific, so you just have to bear that in mind. And here we have Taskforce Superman alongside Crisis Superman. You will see that they have the same body buck, a very similar cape, but different in that the Taskforce one has wire along the bottom, which makes it a bit thicker and bulkier. It doesn't quite hang as nicely, I would say. And of course, the paint job is completely different, as is the head sculpt. And of course, Crisis Superman came with alternate hands. So all round, if this is the sort of Superman body that you want, the Crisis Superman is the way to go. Finally, here we have Darkseid, the mega figure version with the superpowers design, and this Taskforce version. Needless to say, I think that the new version has better colors overall, and even the paint job, you could say it's preferable if you can kind of just ignore the fact that it's sort of like a pixelated video game look. I think it'd make a really nice classic Darkseid, and of course you can remove that paint if you are, talented and have the willpower. It shouldn't be too difficult. Having said that, if you don't feel like buying the whole wave just to get Darkseid, you'll be more than happy, I think, with the Superpowers mega figure version on the left. So while none of these figures in and of themselves will be the sort of main Superman, Aquaman, Flash or Batman in your collection, and each individual figure on its own may not be your favorite version of each of these characters, I think the power of this wave, if it appeals to you at all, if you have any 90s nostalgia or you like video game aesthetics, I think the power of this wave is in them as a whole, as a wave. Okay, so if you're thinking about just maybe picking up one or two, I could see the use case for Aquaman. I think he's the only one that will work as an Aquaman in your collection, particularly if you just remove the paint off his legs. I think you'd be in business. Flash is never going to be your default Flash because that emblem there is just, it's too pixelated. You can't remove it, of course, and it's just not going to work, okay? It's not going to work as a default Flash, in my opinion. And Batman and Superman, quite obviously, are just, they're so extreme in their design that it's just never going to work. So the power of this wave is in it, as a total package in combination with each other. And I think if you approach it that way, like this is just going to be a unique little corner of your collection with a unique aesthetic based on something quite obscure, I think you could see the charm in it, and I think there's a lot to sort of like. You're in for a penny, in for a pound, in my opinion. You're probably going to get them all and pose them together in action shots, maybe fighting Darkseid, and I think that's where the appeal of the wave will be. I'm not making excuses for some of the execution. I think paint-wise could have been a lot better. They could have delivered on this concept a lot better, but it's not terrible, right? And I think if you put them all together, it's actually quite charming. So that's all from me, guys. I've spoken long enough about this Justice League Taskforce wave. I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments, are you interested in this wave? If so, will you be picking up all the figures or just one? And if so, which one? I'm really curious to know what you think, as I think this is going to be one of those waves that really divides the community, and that's fine. We can all disagree, but hopefully we can each discuss our ideas in a thoughtful and civil way. Anyway, if this video has been helpful, entertaining, informative, or you just like me, why not give it a like? And if you haven't subscribed, please do, it really helps me out. Until next time, friends, happy collecting, and thank you so much for watching.